Hey guys, I just wanted to hop on here for a quick little energy update. I'm still trying to figure out how to best reach everyone, how to sort of do these energy updates, video format. So if anyone has any advice, let me know. But I guess with Instagram, it's good to just do a live and then I can save it so you can revisit it. But hi, nice to see you guys. Ansley, Cynthia, Ellie, hi everyone. So we are in a really, really thick energetic time. We're, of course, navigated last week, which was the 222 portal and America's Pluto return. So that time is, has been kind of building, right? Pluto moves really slow. So we've been building up to that 222 portal for a while, up to America's Pluto return. Hi everyone. If you guys have any questions about the energy currently or anything, let me know and I can answer it. But I'm just going to do a quick little live here so we can just talk about the energy that we're in, because this week in particular is really, really thick and dense. And I say dense, not in a negative way. It's just like there's a lot of nutrients in here that we can sort of harvest. But thinking about where we're at currently, it's thick and it's slow and it's a lot, and there's so much coming in that it can be overwhelming and overstimulating for our systems, for our nervous systems, or even our immune systems, for our bodies to process when we're hit with all of this surfacing of trauma, which pings us all independently, differently. And so talking about just a little bit of the energy breakdown right now. Hey, Erin, love you. Yeah, it's quite heavy right now. So, we're at this point where Pluto has returned to the same place it was when we signed the Declaration of Independence as a nation. So that's called our Pluto return. Anytime we have a planet that returns to the same place it was when we were born, we have a return of that planet. So we all experience Mars returns, we experience Saturn returns, as we are all pretty much familiar with at this point. But having America as a nation, our Pluto return is big, because if we look at the history of America, the US, it's pretty interwoven into our global network, our global collective, essentially. So what happens here really has a massive ripple effect throughout the global framework. And if we look at, of course, what's happening, I think, which is at the forefront of a lot of our minds with Russia and Ukraine, it feels like really a product of what we've been navigating energetically as a nation as well. Our relationship to power, our enslavement to the systems that really seek to keep us enslaved. If we're looking at, even our healthcare systems and the way it operates and how it's set up to create dependency upon it. That's just one example. But if we look at the base and the root of all of that, there really is this kind of general theme, and it's that many of the systems that are sort of operating and running our world at this point, kind of like the big structures, are rooted in the vibration of control or greed or money or power. And the way they stay in that place is through the feeding of it. So when we look at kind of the general themes for right now, and we think about Pluto in general, it is around our own control, our own power, our sense of power and where we get it from. And so there's this sort of balancing of the masculine and feminine happening right now with Mars and Venus conjunct, now playing together with Pluto. So what does that tell us? It's unearthing, which is Plutonic, unearthing the shadow and the trauma around our sense of our masculinity and our femininity. And so that union that we're all in the midst of collectively is getting played out on a global scale. Our sense of the patriarchy, which is rooted in, this sort of toxic masculinity, and our need for matriarchal, foundations, which it's a slow cruise ship that we're steering, but It's asking for us to figure out how we can first find that within ourselves, find that union of the masculine and feminine within ourselves, use this Plutonic times to unearth the systems within us that are out of balance, that are maybe feeding the old narratives or stuck in old patterns that aren't serving any longer. And then how we can use a discerning eye when taking in information, the massive amounts of information that we're receiving now collectively. Use a discerning eye and the filter of our own power and truth when taking in this information and asking, is this feeding old systems or is this feeding the new systems we'd like to build? Because we're all doing this work, essentially, is we're recalibrating, and we're inviting in perhaps uncomfortable truths, uncomfortable exposure of our own internal systems, the patterns that maybe have kept us tied to and chained to things that we no longer want to invite into our lives, like old relational patterns or old patterns with money that are keeping us sort of in old, small frameworks, and exposing what's at the root of it, right? The exposure of it, the unearthing the Plutonic nature of that in order to create new ones, So it's this masculine and feminine interaction that we're in right now, with Mars, Pluto, and Venus all interacting right now. And then looking at that, of course, our own internal systems, this is always the as above, so below. And then looking at it externally, what's happening with the world, and which we're so privy to having this very interesting media network that we have now in our phones, which keeps us so ingrained. So there's so much I could say about this, but sorry, I'm kind of holding my phone while I do this live, which I don't know if is the best idea, but knowing that we have that sort of like exposure happening and that it's feeling really overwhelming because we're not really wired for this level of exposure. We're experiencing a massive shift in humanity. And with that comes a need and the exposing of our need for our nervous systems to be nurtured through that process. And the fact that we know in each second, in each moment, what is happening across the globe, that is really, really overstimulating, for our nervous systems, which are wired to know what's happening within our tribe, what's happening, in a 5-mile radius even. And so thinking about that, our nervous systems are wired for that, and that they're receiving information from across the globe is a lot. Now, taking that knowledge of, what we're experiencing on a global scale, taking that into our own, processing systems, our own nervous systems, and trying to do that, and then operating at the pace at which we were during pre-COVID times, that's a recipe for a crash, So I've noticed that for myself, this invitation to adopt more slowness with this Taurus North Node transit. And I think that all of us are kind of feeling that, like, physical symptoms surfacing due to kind of an overstimulation. And that's really something to pay attention to right now, is how much this Taurus North Node transit is inviting us into the body and into the present moment, which is where we're able to sort of process the information that we're getting, how this global, experience and all of the pain and suffering we're seeing unfold in Ukraine, and how that lands, for each of us individually, because it's interesting knowing that what's happening across the globe and knowing that there's really no separation between us and the Ukrainians, what they're experiencing, and being able to process that level of grief, and seeing, the suffering and the separation of families, how that pings our own internal systems, knowing that each one of us has a connection to war, whether it's from grandparents participating in, or parents even participating in World War II, whether it's our own ancestry, which has been, exposed to some level of separation, war, that it's woven kind of into our own fabric of who we are. It's in our bones, it's in our DNA. All of that gets activated when we see what's happening across the globe. And so just keep that in mind. Navigate this week with gentleness, with compassion, with love, with that Venus, Mars, Pluto conjunction. They're all dancing together. It's kind of the theme for this week, but then we also have on the other side of the spectrum, we have Jupiter and Pisces with Neptune, which is so much about illusion, dreaming, expansion, but also illusion too, and kind of thinking about where there's illusion woven into what we're receiving as well. So using that filter of discernment, a discerning eye, bringing it into our own framework, our own, systems that we have running, and using discernment about whether or not it's true or it's operating from old systems, old beliefs, where there's illusion even in that, and where there's illusion in the actual message. So anything Jupiter touches, it expands. So knowing it's dancing with Jupiter, dancing with Neptune and Pisces right now, that's a sign of dreams. Neptune's the sign of dreams, illusion even. So there's just a lot unfolding. So if we look at both of those two sort of polarities of like the density of Mars and Venus and Pluto together, and that's kind of dense because it's a lot of surfacing of trauma. And then we look at Jupiter in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces, and that we're also at the same time feeling this polarity of so much expansion within our own beings as well. Just allowing yourself to kind of, once again, return to that center point. These times are so much about reflecting back to us the ways in which we give our power away and the opportunities to bring that power back into our own center point, our own beings. And then observing the response to either the people or the systems when we do set boundaries, when we do take our power back, when we do shift into new versions of us that feel better and more aligned with where we'd like to go. So a lot unfolding this week. Just keeping in mind that we are not machines, that we are not robots, that we have intricate systems within nervous systems, immune systems that respond to the nervous systems, all of that. And just treating yourself really gently, with a lot of compassion this week. Thinking about, processing this internally before, responding, and then responding in a way that feels empowered, not only for you, but for the people of Ukraine, for the global collective that is watching this very closely, because I think it's very telling of perhaps the ways in which the systems that be would like to keep us chained to the old ways, and how we can actually shift into new ways and a new world. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. But it was so lovely to spend a little time with you guys this morning. I am in my pajamas in my bedroom, so thank you for joining. I'm sending you lots and lots of love.